Well, for more, we can speak with Negar Mortazavi, a senior fellow at the Center for International Policy and host of the Iran podcast. Negar, thanks for joining us. What's your read on where things are at the moment then? It really does seem like the MOU is clearly not being held up by either side.
It isn't. I mean, the Iranians essentially first accused the U.S. of violating multiple points of the MOU in Lebanon, where the conflict continued. And the U.S. also tried to do a side deal or mediate a side deal between the Israelis and the Lebanese government that, from the Iranian viewpoint, contradicted that first point in the MOU. And then also in the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. tried to coordinate with Oman from the Omani side, open a separate lane. The Iranian understanding of the MOU was that they're going to open the strait, but with coordination, the quote unquote safe passage. And the US was doing something in parallel, and then it escalated into where we are now. Now we have, dozens killed on the Iranian side, US service members killed. And it's just escalating back to the hot conflict, it seems. And the stated goal, preventing them from having a nuclear weapon is something that last year in the June war, that was stated goal. Iran's nuclear program supposedly was quote unquote obliterated, stated by the president. And then again this year, it just seems to be going in a cycle that's not very easy to understand if there is any strategy here.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question about the strategy of what they were seeing play out now. I mean, Iran is also not just targeting ships in the Strait of Hormuz, but also regional neighbors as well.
Absolutely. So the Iranian strategy also from the beginning, even before the war, as they had threatened and warned their neighbors, was going to be an asymmetric war, essentially escalating what they call horizontally. Basically, U.S. and Israel, so launched the war together, have military supremacy, which Iran cannot match. They're the underdog. And so their strategy was to hit back U.S. allies, these countries in the Persian Gulf who host U.S. bases, which Iran is saying they see them as either directly or indirectly involved in the war and complicit. And also part of the strategy is hoping that they would put pressure on Washington to try to end the war. And that did happen for bringing the MOU to the finish line. We know some of these countries of the Persian Gulf were instrumental in doing that. But now the MOU, the ceasefire, has essentially unraveled, and the two sides are back to the hot conflict, trying to stretch the limits of each side's understanding of the MOU.
Yeah, and when you talk about the sort of hot conflict, I mean, a ninth night of consecutive strikes from the U.S. side. What do we need to understand about what they're trying to achieve then? I mean, are they working? Are they able to bring this conflict closer to a resolution by carrying out these kind of strikes?
I don't think so. I mean, it's just not very clear first what the US goal is by launching this war. It's been called a regime change war. It didn't happen. Destroying the nuclear program didn't really happen. Destroying the Navy, the Army, the Air Force. We know the war is very unpopular here in the US. Every poll shows the majority of Americans are not really on board with any endless Middle East war. And this is really feeling like it's going to be that kind of endless war, on again, off again, on again, off again. I think the problem is President Trump feels like he couldn't come out of this war as the absolute winner, and that may be the main problem. He signed the MOU, and then he started getting criticized for it here in the U.S., not just by Democrats as opponents, but also by some Republicans. The Israelis were not happy with the MOU, and so I feel like stretching the limits of what was gained at the negotiating table seems to be the strategy here, to see if he can get more concessions from the Iranian side on the battlefield. And the Iranian response is that they're not going to capitulate under pressure on the battlefield. And if there's concessions, it has to be done at the negotiating table. So they're trying to also push back to bring this back to the MOU, to the points of the MOU and at the negotiating table, and not have concessions be made on the battlefield.
And just very quickly, Negar, is there room for optimism when it comes to the diplomatic solution?
I don't think diplomacy is dead. We hear it from both sides. I think on the US side, there's just no appetite to continue the war among the public. There's been a lot of criticism from Congress, and I think that's going to mount more, especially as US casualties are increasing. And then on the Iranian side, they didn't want this war, but they wanted to end it on their own terms, feeling that they have established enough deterrence so the war doesn't keep coming back. And that's why I feel like they haven't closed the door to diplomacy, but they also want to make sure whatever is signed at the table is going to be implemented and, not being stretched on the battlefield. So I have hope. And then, of course, the neighbors who are paying a very, very high cost for the war are trying to mediate, trying to, see if they can bring the two sides together. I have hope in diplomacy, but the two sides have to really want it
Okay.
and give it serious chance.
And Negar, thanks very much for that. Negar Mortazavi, a senior fellow at the Center for International Policy and the host of the Iran podcast.